right. So 8:05, am I good to go?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right, sweet. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself a little bit too. You guys did a great job, but just a little bit more detail. I'm an applications engineer for Trimec. I'm out of Raleigh, North Carolina, so the eastern part of the state, eastern seaboard of the United States. Um, it's very rainy here, lots of the year, but it's a nice place. It's close to beaches and stuff like that. We have a lot of industries around here. I work with the electrical tool a lot with several places around here. Um, a lot of concentration in sort of biomedical product and device development. Um, but today we're going to do an overview of the SOLIDWORKS electrical product line. So we're going to, I have a bit of an agenda outlined here. So we're going to cover from the ground up here. So just use case and key benefits of what separates SOLIDWORKS Electrical from other 2D programs that people might use to generate electrical schematics. Then we'll talk a little bit about the system architecture of it. It's not quite the same as SolidWorks Desktop, where it's, just install and you're good to go. There's a couple other things to know about this software package and the way that it actually gets implemented. Then we'll talk about all the different sort of levels and packages of this, much like regular old SolidWorks CAD. There's a standard and a professional version, and also a 3D portion of it as well. So we'll break down the differences there, talk a little bit about why people, in my experience, go with one version over the other. And then we'll actually dive in and do a software demonstration for you all. So I'll navigate around and create electrical schematics, talk a little bit about what SOLIDWORKS Electrical is great at, what it might not be so great at. And I'll show you, I'll take questions too at the end and sort of discuss anything that we may have missed, or if you are curious about anything, I'm happy to try to show it as best I can. If I can't show it, I'm happy to take some contact information and send you guys, a follow-up email with a blog or a video that's been recorded for how to do that if I'm not ready for it on the spot. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started if that sounds good with everybody. I'll take questions too in the chat. I know we might have a lot of attendees, so I'll try to keep an eye on that. And let me see if I do the full screen, pull up the Zoom app. Yes, I can still see the chat and everything. So I'll be sure to keep an eye on that. And if anybody has questions, I'll try to answer them. So let's get started then. So we're going to start off talking about the use case and the key benefits of SolidWorks Electrical. So why are people using this product in the first place over other products? And the key things here to understand are that in speaking with people from Dassault, so who makes SolidWorks, they actually have even joked about renaming the tool to just SolidWorks Schematics rather than SolidWorks Electrical. Because it's for 2D schematic creation, that doesn't necessarily mean just electrical products. It can actually do also hydraulic and pneumatic schematics. So for systems where you have pumps and valves and systems like that, this tool can also be really applicable to create P&ID schematics. But electrical covers a lot of what this tool is for. It's a 2D tool to be able to draw lines and wires between electrical components to demonstrate how they're laid out. Where a lot of the value of this tool versus competitors comes in is the schematic reporting capabilities. So for a lot of people, you would create the 2D drawing, you would have to go through and manually add the marks for a lot of symbols that are in that schematic. And then you would have to go through again in an Excel or in the inherent CAD program. You would have to actually manually create your reports and your wire run lists, which That's pretty tedious for a lot of electrical engineers to generate all of that from scratch. With SOLIDWORKS Electrical, when you're creating your 2D schematic, it's actually building the report and a lot of other associated documentation in the background for you so that you don't have to worry about actually creating that manually. Further, another key benefit here is that because this is a SOLIDWORKS product, this can connect to a 3D CAD environment. So if we need to be able to route wires and show that, we are able to do so. I think someone might be unmuted right now. But I'll continue ahead for the time being. So let's see. So other benefits, just like SOLIDWORKS is able to make updates to one part and then update it everywhere that that part is in an assembly. SOLIDWORKS Electrical can make updates everywhere as well. The components are associative. So if I were to change a manufacturer part for a component in one location and then would need to update that manufacturer part, it will update that manufacturer for me everywhere. Project auditing is another key capability here. So think of this almost like design rule check in SOLIDWORKS CAD. This is something that can basically view your projects, and if you've missed something, it will notify you in a report. So let's say I put down a wire and I did not give it a wire number. So again, that's something that would cause issues downstream in a manufacturing scenario where I missed a wire because it wasn't in a report, right? This software is able to track that for you and let you know when that error has been made. Further, the 3D routing capabilities, it's automated using your 2D schematics. So not only can we connect to 3D CAD, but the routing of the wires between those components in the SOLIDWORKS interface is automated because of what you've done in the 2D schematic. It understands that you have a wire running from this port on this component to this port on this component, and it will make that connection for you. And we're going to show that today, and I'll show you a little bit of the magic behind that and why it's able to do that basically. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture here. SOLIDWORKS Electrical, again, is not quite as straightforward as installing SOLIDWORKS CAD. It's actually connected through a collaborative server. So there's a SQL database that is tracking what components are being put down on the paper and all of the associated information with those components. So again, it's not just a line in SOLIDWORKS Electrical, it's an actual wire with a gauge and a jacket color and a thickness. It's all representing something in the real world that's going into your reports, which are then also pulled from SQL. So that means when you install SOLIDWORKS Electrical, not only do you need to install the software on your machine, the client, but you also would need to make sure that it's pointed to your collaborative server if you're working with multiple people. So another key benefit here is that the electrical schematic professional version can also connect to SOLIDWORKS PDM, which it's a little interesting because not only is SOLIDWORKS Electrical something that you can work collaboratively with, it's a little bit different from PDM where there's check-in, check-out type stuff. But you can still manage and control revisions and data within PDM, manage your electrical bills of materials, and get project previews in PDM as well. So it's a pretty intelligent program. And to do that, it has to have some extra brains in the background, is what I would say. The collaborative server is what helps SOLIDWORKS Electrical think. So a couple other things too, some system requirements. This is just basic stuff, but the key thing I wanted to just sort of point out here is that we're working with a 2D CAD program. So we require a little less from a GPU. You don't have to have something, like a RTX 4090 or something like that. You can use a regular old graphics card or even some integrated graphics. It requires less install space and less RAM to be able to do a lot of the things that you would need to be able to do. There is sort of a max number of recommended concurrent users. That would be about 5. Um, but that's really the key things to understand here about it. You also will have that server component to make sure, again, give this a bit of brains in the background. But that's really what's critical to understand about any sort of installation or setting yourself up for success with this. So before we get to electrical packages, just want to do a quick check. Everybody good so far in terms of how I'm speaking and I'm understood, and any questions or anything?
Yes, Mr. Ray, so far you are very clear.
Mhm.
No issues at all.
All right, excellent. Yeah, so if all right, and chat's saying all good too. Appreciate that feedback. I do like to keep this a little interactive, so I might ask questions from time to time too, just to see if stuff is familiar or new to you guys. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about how SolidWorks splits this up into different electrical packages. So there's really 3. There's standard, professional, and 3D. The 3D is a little bit separate. It's sort of on an island of its own. And then there's the electrical schematic tool. So there are sort of prerequisites and building blocks here. So the key things to understand are that there's 2 levels to the electrical schematic tool. There's a standard and a professional. And then if you are at the electrical schematic professional level, you have the ability to purchase the electrical 3D add-in, which is what is going to connect your electrical schematics to your SolidWorks CAD files. So a bit more of a breakdown on that. Standard is going to get you everything you need to do in the electrical schematic tool in 2D minus a couple bells and whistles, really. So you're going to be able to do single line block diagrams, more detailed electrical schematics, multi-line schematics. You'll be able to do things like a 2D panel layout as well, if you would like to see what your cabinet would look like when you build it. It will get you the report generation, the design auditing, and it also allows for just fundamental drawing generation for electrical schematics. Where things get sort of kicked up a notch in professional would be that it is more of a collaborative environment. You have a shared parts and symbols library that allows for a multi-user environment. Most of the time when I work with companies, they are evaluating the schematic professional version for this reason. It's the multi-user environment. Most companies that use electrical standard, they really only need the 2D schematic, and there's only really one person that's working on it. Further, other reasons people go up to professional, there's report templates, so you can configure those to be more customized. Enhanced PLC tools. So if you're doing a lot of work with PLCs, also I was a mechanical engineer by trade before this. I learned this tool through TriMech, and I haven't dealt a lot with electronics in industry other than interfacing with clients to this. So PLC, programmable logic controller. That's you get some benefit tools there to be able to work with it. Excel drawing automation is another one. You can basically programmatically, if you have a similar schematic that you're creating time and time again, have Excel automate the creation of your schematics. The PDM connector is another big one. So you have to have professional to be able to connect to SolidWorks PDM. And then you need to be able to, or professional allows you to do floating license support as well as term licenses. And then SQL Standard is also supported. You can run this on SQL Express, but SQL Standard will give you a lot more bandwidth. And there's some other features there on Microsoft's side that are also beneficial in terms of backing up databases, etc. Then finally, if you have electrical schematic professional, you're able to use the electrical 3D if you purchase that as well. So that will link to 3D CAD. You have a shared ECAD and MCAD database. So that would be things like, you know, sharing the 3D files for the components that you're placing in the 2D schematic. You'll be able to connect that so that it's all in one single library that you can look at. You can do 3D panel layouts as well as harness routing and harness diagrams that are a little bit more advanced and simple to use compared to the routing tool in SOLIDWORKS Premium. That is a question that we do get a lot. What's the difference between electrical 3D and the routing capabilities in SOLIDWORKS Premium? And the critical answer there would be that in electrical 3D, the schematics that you create are driving what is being routed. If you don't have an electrical schematic that's helping with your harnesses or your wire routing, you want to look at the premium routing in SOLIDWORKS Premium. That's the key difference there. And this does get bundled together too for the SOLIDWORKS Electrical Professional bundle. Again, that's not schematic professional. This is just electrical professional. This is a bundle that will get you a seat of electrical schematic professional with electrical 3D. So just another way of sort of cutting it. Dassault wants to give all of its customers a lot of different options, and it's part of my job to help parse out our clients' needs to see which of these packages is right for them. So again, the critical differences here, the things that come up the most as to why a lot of people go with Pro would be, again, that collaborative library. They need support for a multi-user environment. Maybe too, they already have PDM and SQL standard, and they need something that can support that. Other than that, network and term license support. They're not working in this day in and day out. They have people that are doing this for 4 hours a day and want to split it. So they choose to use a network license instead. They also want to integrate to PDM. And in many instances, those wire lengths are critical, and the electrical 3D portion of this will bring it back into your reports. So they go to professional to give themselves either the option or to immediately start working in the electrical 3D tool. And that's going to bring us to what should be the bulk of our presentation this afternoon for you all, this morning for me, the demonstration. Before I dive in, any questions? I think the chat's been quiet. Otherwise, I think I will go ahead. But let's take a look. So let's get to know SOLIDWORKS Electrical. I'm going to go in and create an electrical schematic. Then I'm going to show you how to do some automated reporting. I'm going to do that design auditing as well to show you guys what a rule check looks like in this program. And then we'll do the really fun stuff, which is the 3D integration. I'll show you how this program can route wires. It looks a little magical at first, but it's a really cool tool to be able to work with. So starting off, we're going to do some schematic creation. I'm going to show a simple circuit, explain some differences and walk through this, and then discuss a little bit about the parts library and inserting some off-page references. So this is the electrical schematic interface. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick. And so you may notice a couple similarities to SOLIDWORKS CAD here. You have this is like your command manager up top. You have your electrical project, import, export your process. Over here, almost like a feature tree, right? I have pages in my schematic as well as my components over here. And then this is very similar to the task pane. We have things like properties, a home page, and over here something called the electrical content portal. I'm not logged into this right now, but I might pull it up a little bit later to show you all, because basically what the electrical content portal is it is a 3D library that SOLIDWORKS has partnered with a lot of companies for, so that to build out your library of electrical components, you can basically just download those components. And we'll talk about libraries as we go through this. So I'm actually going to go from scratch here. Let's open a new project. So let's go electrical project, or sorry, home, electrical project. We're going to close this one out, and I'm going to start a new one. I start it from a template that I have, so it has all these pages built out for me, but we're still going to work out because there's still work to be done. So I'm going to hit OK. And in the background, it's going to discuss with the database what's going to be coming out of this project. So here we have a title for it. And one of the big things here is that since this is backed by a database, there's going to be a lot of data and a lot of input that isn't necessarily required, but is you can put in to basically track and search through projects. So things like what the contract number might be, an address for the design office, things like that. Other things too for environments where things need to be translated. There are fields of translatable data and custom fields to fit everybody's process as needed. So when I hit OK, it's going to connect the database, extract all the data, and create my project for me. So here we are, and we'll get started. I'm going to begin by opening up this power distribution page of the schematic. And I don't need this properties to be so big, but I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to show some interesting things. So you can see my schematic tools are up, and I'm able to start working here. One of the critical things I want to point out here, and how we're going to start off this drawing, is basically I'm going to create a new line of running out to these motors using the same components. I'm going to add a circuit breaker, a contact relay, my terminal blocks. We're going to create a cable, and then we're going to do some other things to note different locations for the motors versus the other components. But we're going to start off the most fundamental thing in any CAD program. We're going to draw a line. So I'm going to draw multiple lines, actually. I'm going to use the draw multiple wires function. And here's what I want to point out here. When I open this up, you'll notice there's a lot of different ways to draw lines. And that's because, again, everything I put down on this schematic represents an object in the physical world. This isn't just going to be a series of wires or lines, basically. It's going to actually represent wires with different jacket colors, different gauges. So I'll go ahead and put this down here. You'll see when I'm inserting multiple, it's going to give me the direction I want to go, and it automatically trims those wires for me as well. So I'll keep running this out. It doesn't matter if I overdraw it, the motor that I insert is going to trim it. And there's even keyboard shortcuts if I need to be able to invert the phase or just create a bend. So there we go. And again, when I click on it over here, you can see the properties. Let me see if I have my application. I do. It's my Zoom application. So you can see there's a diameter associated with it, the gauge, all of that is there. So a key benefit of SOLIDWORKS Electrical, and one of the reasons it's so user-friendly, is that if I wanted to, I could have just copied and pasted this entire line, and it would automatically increment all of these symbols for me to the next available number. But I want to be able to show you all the ways that we can insert symbols. So let's start off by inserting our motor. I'm going to go up to Insert Symbol. And when I do Other Symbol here, you'll see I have a pretty big library of 2D footprints and different items. I'm going to go to Motors, and I can look at it in thumbnail view. Maybe some things look a little bit similar. I can go to List Mode, and this allows me to see all the other different properties that I have built into this part. So at Trimec, we use our symbols with the TM in the title. So I'll select that. And there it is bound to my mouse. So I'll drop this onto the component. Now I have the option to either associate this with an existing component in the project. So if I needed to associate with a motor that I already put down, maybe on a single line diagram, I'm able to do that. But in this case, I'm actually gonna bring in a different manufacturer part. So this is a little bit like like an Amazon shopping cart or something like that, right? You're shopping online and you have your big database full of all of the parts and components that you use regularly. We can filter by lots of things. So I have it filtered by motors in class. A good question about associating a component. I'll let's put this here, and then I'll show you a little bit of what it means. So I'm going to put this Leroy Sommer motor into my project. So hit plus to basically add the manufacturer part. And I'm going to hit select and put it down into this motor component. And you'll see it trims my wires for me. And it not only has it put down the symbol, but it has also put down the motor that it is. So let's, Rimshaw, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to associate a component right now. So the reason that we want all of this intelligence is, like I was saying earlier, other 2D CAD programs, this is manual. So the symbol is just that. It's a symbol. And the mark there is the only way that you know what that component is or how it might be associated with something. And then you would have to look at a report, which you would also then have to manually create to be able to understand what the actual, part or manufacturer component for that symbol is. SOLIDWORKS Electrical is building all of that in the background. So if I click on this, which again, we just did, when I insert the manufacturer part, it's automatically putting in the manufacturer data for me in terms of the power and the speed. And then if I want to take a look, for instance, at this one and see, all the other locations for it, I'm able to do that. I can go to maybe not component properties. Let's see. I'm looking for, well, let's take a look over here. I know it's in the components area. So for the instrument here, for example, here's M2. This is my component. The reason we associate it is because, again, if I make a change to a manufacturer part, I want it to update everywhere. So not only is this motor right here in my 2D schematic, which again, double clicking here, it will take me right to where this component is, but it's also in a single line diagram here. So I can see everywhere that this component is located, and it'll take me to my single line diagram. So all of this information is being tracked so that if I make a change to a manufacturer part, it's updated here, it's updated back at where it's placed in the multi-line schematic. And if I need to update what the type of component is for my reports, everything is being built out in the background for me. So if I want to, we have our bill of materials here, and we have all the different tags. I'll maybe sort by tag here, and we can see M1, M2, M3. All of these have my specific Leroy Sommer motor. So it's tracking all of this in the background. Does that answer the question, Rimshaw?
I kind of understand this better, but I've actually used this software a bit, but I was confused, like, what does the term associating mean? Like, we do insert symbols and we do insert components. And when we associate them, what does that really mean?
Right. Yeah. So all that it's doing is tying the mark to the manufacturer component, number one, for your reports. And then number two, when you associate it with that mark, it just makes it so that if you need to make a change to underlying information for that mark, it's updated everywhere. That's really the key thing for associated component. It'll kind of mean something a little different in 3D, and I'll show that so that we understand sort of the differences between associating in 2D and 3D. But it's just building out all this information so that your reports get made more quickly. Hopefully that answers it. If we need to clarify more, or I think maybe also showing a little bit about this process further down we'll answer some of the questions. So let's come back to this question after we've built out a little bit more of this line. The next way that we're going to insert a symbol would be by using our symbols tab right here. So I want to install a circuit breaker, and I can do so just by dragging and dropping from, over here. And this is just basically my, quick grab for symbols that I frequently use. And you'll notice this is automatically incrementing to circuit breaker 6. That means there's probably already a CB3 somewhere in this process. And that's okay. I'll let it just increment to whatever the next option is. This is automatic. If I needed to, I could go make some changes there, but I'm going to keep it with CB6 for now. And then for a contact relay, this is just going to be copy and paste. So hit Control C, Control V. And when I paste this, it's going to automatically take up the next mark available for the contact relays. So this is pretty close to being completed. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is create a terminal block. So to create a terminal block, that would actually be back in my schematic. And I'm going to insert N terminals. We have a symbol there. And to insert terminals, this is a little bit different than the way that we would normally do things. To insert a terminal block, we actually draw a line directly across all the wires that we would like to have the terminals created at. So for here, I'll draw the line across. We're going to pick the direction that we go in. And in this case, so here's a thing about associating. My terminal block already exists in my schematic, right? Every other terminal block here you can see is associated with TB2, and I want to keep it that way. So rather than going like we have previously to the manufacturer parts and circuits and searching for a new terminal block to put in, I'm actually just going to click on this TB2. You'll see it updates the root, the number, the mark for me. And then when I hit OK for all the terminals, it's actually going to create the numbers for me automatically here. So it's populating 9, 10, 11, 12 in the terminal block. So this line isn't critical. I'll delete it. But that's why associating would be critical too. So if something, for example, a terminal block where it's already inserted in and we don't want a new mark for it, it's one click to, make this associated with that terminal block and automatically keep track of all the information that's going on in that terminal block, because that can be built out pretty large, right? So we just want to make sure that all of our information is together, and any changes to that terminal block will be updated in all those different places. Is that maybe a bit more clarifying, Rimsha? Hopefully it is. I think your mic might be muted, but okay, great. Yeah, so speaking of sort of components and things that we've already created, I already have a cable spec'd out for what I want to do here, but since we're running from a terminal block to a motor, I want to be able to put this into a cable to make sure that it runs out to the field nicely. So I'm gonna select all these wires right here, and I'm going to associate cable cores. Now, what's going on in this interface is I have my 4 wires that are running out to M3, and currently I don't see any options because I have some filters on, which can be nice for large projects where I need to be able to filter through all the different things here. But currently, I do have some cables. These are highlighted blue because they're already associated. You can see it's the M1 and M2 cables, but I already have my 3rd cable here that doesn't have any associations for its origins or its destinations. Because this cable has unassociated items with it, unassociated cores, I'm just going to select the cable cores and the wires and hit associate cable cores, and it's going to do that for me. And when I hit OK, you'll see this changes, and our marks now represent the cable rather than just the blank. We're going to put our wire numbers in later, and that's also a nice function of SOLIDWORKS Electrical. It's going to be push button in case we ever need to, update one of those everywhere. It's very push button, straightforward procedure. So the next part about creating the schematic is that everything on this side of the page is going to exist in my cabinet, right? My enclosure for all of my electrical components. However, my motors, they're not going to exist there. They're going to exist on my conveyor, right? They're going to be out in the field at a different location. So how would I call out the difference in location if this is on the same page of the diagram and it says that this should be at that location? Well, the answer would be a location outline. So what this is going to do is it's fairly straightforward to create. I'm drawing a rectangle, right? But when I do that, it's going to ask me what location I want to call out for my motors. So I'll select instrument because that's where these are going to be going to. And when I hit select, it's again keeping track of all of the data underlying these components. So everything here has a location already. And because I'm drawing a box around it to change the location, it's going to confirm with me that that's what I want to do. So when I say to change the component location, it's okay with it. It now outlines that all of these motors are in the A3 instrument location. And when we go to the properties of that component, we can see that that location has been updated to the A3 instrument. If I went and took a look at, CR4, it's going to say, well, this is actually in the backplane location. So multiple locations on the same schematic, no problem. The final thing that we're going to do to help build out this schematic is do an origin destination arrow. So if you're not familiar with that, if this is some of your first exposure to electrical schematics, it's basically one of these. So what this is it's an arrow indicating that this line basically continues on another page of our schematics. What's awesome about how SOLIDWORKS Electrical handles it is one, it's really easy to insert one of these, which we're going to do that. But two, these are live links. So if I double click on this, it's going to take me directly to the destination arrow in my other page of my schematic, my sensors of control. It opened it up right for me and showed me where it is. So it's able to keep track of these relationships in case of any updates as well, but it's also a living link. So it makes navigating my electrical projects, particularly if they're larger, pretty breezy and easy in terms of how we're able to do that. So let's talk about how to insert one then. I'm going to click on origin destination arrows, and you'll see I have 2 pages up of my schematic that I want to work on, my power distribution page, my sensors and control page. And I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to select multiple insertion. It's going to highlight the empty end of this wire, so I'll click on it. And what it's actually doing in the background here is it's looking for the wires that are the same or are equipotential to what I just selected. So it's going to give me the option here to place it in this location, which then you can see it gets updated to my O3 page in the A1 block of it, basically. And I can do the same over there. When I hit close, it's associated. I'll double click it. And there we are, back to sensors and control. So it's giving you the location and outline, pretty quick to implement. And if I need to make any updates, it's available for me at a pretty rapid pace. Any questions about the schematic tool? We're about to go back to our PowerPoint. And just, again, we have an interface that shouldn't be too unfamiliar for you all. It's a unified parts and symbols library that contains a lot of information about manufacturer parts and footprints, as well as associative drawings. So changes in one place are updated everywhere. Any questions before we get into reporting? I'm going to take a sip of water here. If we're good to go, I'm going to show a little bit about wire numbering. We're going to talk a bit more at length about reports, and I'm going to talk about the design rule checks. So back in our schematic here, let's take a look at how to wire or create number wire or wired numbers. Over in my process tab, I have a button, number new wires. And it's going to be this easy. I'm not going to have to type it for every single wire I just put in. It's going to ask me, do I want to renumber the new ones without modifying existing? I'll say yeah. And there we go. It's put wire numbers throughout my entire project. I can't imagine having to put that in manually or something, but it's automatically done that. And guess what? If there's any changes, I'm able to update that just by doing renumber wires. It's going to be that easy every single time. And the reason we want to number those wires is because when we go to our reports page and we do a wire run list, all those wire numbers are going to be generated in our reports with links of where things are running to and from. This is pretty cool. So I'll show you the like circuit breaker 1. If I click on it, just like with my wire run list, it'll take me to that location in the project, or, you know, let's do CV2 or something. It will take me there. And then if there's any changes here too, we can update it. There's bills of materials by location, bills of material by book. And if you need to add more custom reports, we're able to do that. There's tons of options for what you may want to put in a report. It's like even a PLC inputs, outputs list, stuff like that. So let's take a look too at power distribution. What this is interesting. I'm not seeing anything on my power distribution schematic. Let's anyways, let's see if we can get this to come back a little bit with our design rule check, because something I didn't do earlier that I use this as a tool to kind of check is I forgot to insert some manufacturer parts for my terminal breaker for those terminals specifically. So there we go. It's brought back here. So you can see, I'll use my zoom tool here. My audit right here is searching for things that would be critical before sending this to manufacturing. It's checking components that are missing a part assignment. So things that wouldn't have anything in the bill of materials, wires missing marks, things not inserted in 3D. But my components missing part assignment, again, these are live links. I can click on TV2. And when I close this out, it's going to be right here for my terminal block. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to edit the terminal strip. So we get a graphical layout of what our terminal strip looks like. I'm going to move these so that everything is in the proper order. That's just a click and drag. And I'm going to now add a couple Wago terminals as the manufacturer parts here. So I will associate it here. I believe I want this 1201. It'll do it in all locations. And then for this one, we want this 1207. So again, it's my library. It's basically like adding it to a shopping cart. Hit select, OK. And you can even see that it gives us a graphical layout that this is associated with our cables. Further, if this view is helpful to somebody who would actually be creating this, we can generate the drawing for it. So I'll click generate drawings. I'm going to put this in my reports folder. And then I have my pop-up here. It's going to generate it, give me some confirmation. And I now have a new drawing under my reports folder where I can double click it. And here's my terminal block laid out, shows the motors in a different location with my cables and where everything is running to with my title block format. We could take this even further if we would like to. So not just terminal blocks are capable of doing this, but also our reports. So if I want to be able to generate drawings for all of my different reports, I'm going to maybe leave out the drawing index, but let's see if I can grab everything here. We'll just do some checks. Yeah, I'm going to repeat how I made the drawing, and this is going to be really similar to for how how I would create the drawing here. But same as where we, like in the interface for the terminal block, there would be a generate drawings button. There's another one in reports. So I'm just going to hit generate drawings, select all of these, and then I do have to, I would like to select multiple of these just because what I want to do is that 3 dot right here, this is basically going to say the location that I want to generate all of these out to. So I'm going to generate it to my reports folder. We'll hit OK. I have to do it for one more here. And when I hit OK, again, it's going to start generating the reports. And I'll go back and show you the terminal block interface too after this, just to show it. But it's a very similar process for anything like that, where it's basically going to take all of this. We're going to close it. And now you can see my reports is even more filled out. So if I go to my wire run list, it's created that table directly for me in my title block format with all of the information. See, we don't have any lengths for anything yet. We haven't put anything into 3D, right? But that is how we would create it. So I'll show you one more time the terminal block system and how we would do that. So let's do power distribution here. The way that I did that is I went to edit the terminal strip, and I'm using the graphical layout here, but if we needed to find it in another place, like let's say we needed to find it in the process enclosure, we can also just go to the component where it is in that interface pane and hit edit the terminal strip and generate drawings right up here. So again, it would ask us for, I think because we already created this, this would basically just update it at this point. But you just click it and we're able to do it. So that's sort of the end of wire numbering, reports, design rule check. We're going to come back to it after we do the 3D portion. But in summary here, so project auditing, that's something that's taken care of for us, since SOLIDWORKS Electrical is going to keep track of everything in the background. Reports can be customized, again, generated to your title block, etc. And then we're reducing design errors because we have our reports, which again have associative live links. We're able to go directly to where any sort of errors, anything would be, information like that. So any questions before we move into the 3D integration portion? If we have some time at the end, I can also show some additional schematic functionality here too. I have it might actually be good if I show a little bit of that right now, because it might be good to talk about what this tool isn't great for and isn't the use case for it. So before I do that, one sip of water real quick. But I'm going to show you one or two things here. So let's close out of that. And so here we are in our schematic, and I'm actually going to open an additional page here. The page I want to open, there's two things here really. One would be we can do a cabinet layout. So if we're just using the schematic tool and don't want to go into 3D, SOLIDWORKS Electrical can create a cabinet layout. Again, this is just like associated, it's in our library. Several components would have footprints like this that we could put down. And so if I go to, filter this out, we'll see some similarities between this and the 3D. If I want to be able to put in, CR2 and CR4, I can do an insert for multiple components and it will automatically space it out for me. And there we go. It's associated. Our 2D footprint is created. We can edit the rails, information like that. A little bit further, this is something that was new in 2024. I'm just selecting all of this so that I can move it over a little bit. I'm actually giving a webinar on 2D and 3D cabinet layouts next month, but we can auto balloon it. So just like a SOLIDWORKS bill of materials for an assembly, we can hit auto balloon and select a shape type, how we would like everything to be laid out. You can see here, it's creating it. Maybe that scale's a little small. Let's bump it up to like 3 or something. Perfect. We can hit OK, and then it'll ask me for just where I would like the table to be. So I'll just draw a box. And it inserts our bill of materials for us. So we can create a cabinet layout. Things like cabinets, rails, components are built out within our same library, associated to the same components in the library, just are given a 2D footprint, basically. And then the other thing too, which I wouldn't say it's a limitation, it's just not what our tool is meant for, would be PCB design. So there are other tools for PCB design. And if you want to bring your PCBs into a 3D environment, that's actually something that SOLIDWORKS itself is already capable of doing using CircuitWorks, using the proper file formats. Where SOLIDWORKS Electrical can come in handy is if you are interfacing those PCBs with other components that would be relevant to have in an electrical 2D schematic diagram. For example, here we have a line diagram of a PCB where we have connectors running from PCB 1 to PCB 2, but we can also lay it out in a single line diagram of what's running from the connectors from those PCBs and where those wires are actually going. So where we can actually associate those components would be, I believe, on our instrument, we have our PCBs here. So for example, we have a connector, UJ2. It's on my PCB2, and I want to just associate it so that it's on that parent PCB. That's a pretty easy operation. I'll just drag and drop this PCB2. We can see all of our connectors here. And if I want to show it in the single line context, I can insert the connector. And here we have our single line diagram for it. I'm going to get rid of the rounded corners, and I'll just drop it down here. So there we go. That's how we can represent PCBs. But again, this isn't a full suite PCB design program. It's the line diagram and the schematic. So something that people get confused on when I've worked with clients that I want to make you all aware of, just for the use case here. But okay, if we're good to go on that and no further questions, let's talk a little bit about 3D in the rest of the time that we have here. So I'm going to open up. I'll start off in my 2D because I can actually associate my SOLIDWORKS assemblies within my electrical panel. So double click this process enclosure. Again, this is named after the location that I've been working in, and this will start to open within SOLIDWORKS. So SOLIDWORKS is working to open it up right now. Update that assembly. And here we are in the 3D environment. So this should look pretty familiar to everybody here. And here we just have an electrical cabinet. So we can filter components that may already be associated, as well as filter components that may not be of use to us in 3D. Things like accessory and auxiliary manufacturer parts, they may be so small that it doesn't make sense to insert them in 3D or have a part file designated for those. So clicking this filter button is going to get rid of those for us. Now, here we are, and I have my components that I was just working on, right? So let's go ahead. I'm going to start off just by inserting one of my contact relays. So you'll see here, this is automatically snapping to the rail. And when I hit OK, it's going to drop it there for me. And if I do the filter button again, which is, you have to do that to refresh, you'll see that this isn't here anymore. It's in the program and associated to something in my electrical schematic. Now, we can insert multiple components. We can insert terminal blocks, what have you. But the key thing to understand here is that because we did all of our work for what connections need to be made where in our 2D schematic, we can hit route wires and it's going to automatically do it for us. So I'm going to use a 3D sketch route, some splines, different parameters. If you have like minimum bends or bend radii that you have to adhere to, you can input those to ensure that you're not doing something that would be physically impossible with the gauge of the wires you're working with. But I'm just going to hit OK and then hands off. It's going to start routing everything for me. So you'll see it's going to draw all the routes. And it's basically using what I've done in the 2D. So understanding what terminals connect to where, and then it's going to route all of these wires for me. So here you can see, again, my hands were not touching anything. It's routed all of this for me. And here's why this is happening. What's going on in here is that every component here has a little bit of intelligence built into it. So if I were to open up this part, this contact relay that we inserted, you can see here, it's got a couple different items here. Those are electrical connection points. These connection points, 0.0, 11, these all correlate to the connection points that are on the 2D schematic. So it's knowing that this wire needs to run from this connection point on the contact relay to its final destination in the circuit breaker, something like that. And I understand too that that might not be enough, right? It could just do that and then just do a straight line. That would be the shortest way to do it, right? But these rails and other components also have intelligence built in as well. So there are basically like lines. Think of them as almost like train tracks that everything is sort of following up on. I think let me try to display like some, if I could display like some reference geometry here, because I think trying to wireways, I think is what I want. This is basically, there's some underlying information here that has like straight lines and axes that the wires know to hook up to, so that then they'll be visible basically and able to make these connections for us. So a design change comes up, or let's say I forgot to do something. Another way that we can do things in electrical 3D is you'll notice that this circuit breaker doesn't have any wires running from it. And that's okay. We've already inserted it. And if the mechanical side has gotten a jump on the schematic side, it's no problem to go back later and say, I want to associate this with an existing component in 3D. SOLIDWORKS will even take out some of the frustration for us of figuring out which one before we route the wires if we want to. And it will actually make all the ones that are already associated transparent. So I know that this is the circuit breaker I need to associate. So when I hit OK, that is now associated. I'll hit to refresh. And there we go. See, it's gone. And now I'll hit route wires again. And when I hit OK, it's going to run through the same process again. It's already done a lot of the calculations. But it's now going to include that circuit breaker that we associated. So when we zoom in here again, you'll see now we have our wires running from this circuit breaker. So again, some key benefits here of the 3D package are that it has the intelligence of the 2D schematics, and we're going to go back into the schematic tool for a moment. Even better, it's taking those lengths of those splines and actually putting them into our report. So when I go to my wire run list, you'll notice these were zeros before, but now CB1 to CR1 has a length of 13.9 inches. So at operations where wire lengths are critical and you need to understand how much wire to bring to a site so that you don't run out, this is a great tool to be able to automatically generate or get estimates of how much wire to bring between different components as they're laid out in 3D. Any questions on that? I think we're pretty close to the end here. So again, communication between your schematic generator and your MCAD creators is going to be a lot more streamlined since electrical 3D is going to take a lot of the work of that out for us. And then again, improve design intent. So understanding that there's multiple ways to work here and how it translates. The 3D tool is really great for both those purposes. So high level overview again, we work through some schematic creation, some automatic reporting, and how the 3D integration works. So this is the baseline of SOLIDWORKS Electrical and how it's able to work and some of the key benefits of this software over some competitors. But that takes me to the last slide. Any questions? I can't remember in terms of time if I'm over or not, if this was supposed to end at 9 or if it's over at 9:30. But if there's no questions too, I can maybe go back in and show one or two other things in the schematic side of the software.
I actually had a general question.
Okay.
This is my first time attending an online webinar like this about
Mhm.
related to SolidWorks Electrical, and it's been a month since I started exploring the software.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you if like you have a proper schedule for hosting these webinars, or like these are just randomly, you just randomly had this one.
I think this was just the topic picked by Ugaswug. But I know at TriMech, we do have pretty regular webinars on electrical. Again, I'm giving the one next month on 2D and 3D cabinet layouts, but and we are based in North America, Eastern Standard Time. So it could be at sort of odd hours. I think we usually give them at like 10 or 11 a.m. though. So 2 or 3 hours from now. But if you're interested, there's a lot of content out there dedicated to this tool for webinars on demand too from our website. So
All right, can you share the link of the website if there are any free webinars and if there are
yeah,
any paid webinars for anyone who is interested in learning about the software?
certainly, yeah.
And would there be any, like by any chance, would you have some video recordings of webinars that have already been held?
Right, yeah. So our website too has archived webinars. So and we have filters by product too, so you can take a look. But that's to everybody. That's just TriMech's website. If you want to understand a little bit more too about what we do, yeah. And this is all learning too. It's there's rules to what I can say as a reseller at SOLIDWORKS user group meetings. So I can't give anybody anything that would make them want to try to buy something from us. But I don't think we can sell in Uganda anyway. So just learning materials, and I'm always happy to give learning resources too. I'll drop my email address as well. In the chat. So if anybody has any follow-up questions or just wants to get connected to get learning resources, I'm also happy to help.
And is the company that you work in basically just a reseller of SolidWorks Electrical?
No, we do lots of things generally. We're sort of an engineering resource company. So the main things that we would do are SolidWorks, as well as some SolidWorks add-ins like DriveWorks. We do implementations for those things too. So we offer services related to that. We do some 3D printing and 3D scanning. So my backpack is actually right next to me right here. I'll show you guys some fun stuff on camera. I've got we have a printer out of our Charlotte